All right, welcome to Conversation with Rickford Burke. Of course, this is Rickford here in New York. Share the link, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the program. Today is Sunday, April 21st, and I'm coming to you live from New York. Share the link, everybody. Share the link. We had some technical difficulties, so we can start at 8, but we're here at 9. Share the link, whether you're watching from the west coast of the United States, it's evening there. Whether you're watching from Guyana, 9 o'clock at night. New York, 9 o'clock at night. The Caribbean, 9 o'clock at night, except Jamaica. And Europe and Africa. Good morning to you. Wherever you're watching from, I hope you're having a good time or a peaceful rest. Share the link, everybody. Share the link. Ensure that everybody in your contact gets this link so they could watch the show. My good friends there out in Japan and Germany, good night to you in the U.S. military. Thank you for your service. Those of you watching from Guyana, Keep holding the faith. In Brooklyn, if you're watching from Brooklyn, you need to watch. I have something to say about Brooklyn at the end of the program. And of course, in the Caribbean, you're right home with Guyana. Lots going on that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the um, International Decade for People of African Descent that the United Nations has been celebrating for the last 10 years, which is about to come to an end next year, I think, and calls for the renewal of the decade for the next decade because people of African descent are still disadvantaged around the world. Slavery, some countries had slavery that was abolished over 200 years. And like in Guyana, some people still live in subjugation, still live in servitude. And so there's call for the decade to be extended and for reparations to be paid to the people of African descent for slavery. No other reason. Reparations are for indentured laborers. They were not enslaved. So the people who advance that nonsense are diminishing the significance of the world's most atrocity, the most horrible atrocity known to humanity, slavery, where hundreds of millions of people were killed. The people who are lumping indentured labor, when those laborers were paid and slaves were not, are insulting the heritage of the indomitable slaves and diminishing worldwide recognition for what they endured. So when we talk about reparations, we're talking about to compensate for the atrocities, the horrors, the crimes against humanity that were committed against Black people from Africa who were enslaved. Keep sharing the link, everybody. Keep sharing the link. So we'll talk about what happened at at the International Decade at the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland. We talk about how the Bar Jack there and Irfan Ali and the other people who make decisions in the People's Progressive Party civic government of Guyana are incredible. They're geniuses. They don't care how they look as racists. They don't care what Black people think about them. They don't care about what the world thinks about how they treat Black people in Guyana. I make bold to say that their ancestors, the majority of the people in the People's Progressive Party. I'm speaking to those people. I'm not speaking to East Indians generally, so don't conflate the two. But I make no apologies for standing up and representing my ancestry. The people in the PNC, in the PPP who are mistreating Black people, their ancestors came to Guyana and met Black people. Their ancestors came to Guyana not as slaves, but as indentured laborers. They came to a Guyana that had a foundation that was built by the slaves. And they should respect it. But the PPP does not respect that. And the reason the PPP does not respect that, keep sharing the link, everybody, is because they are sufficiently able to intimidate people and bribe the others to accept their conduct, to accept whatever they destine for Black people. And then they have a few black people in their midst that they condition to go out and defend them. You see, under Bar Jagdeo, the world recognized how racist Bar Jagdeo is because he hardly had black people to defend him. He had Roger Luncheon, who was basically a lost cause. I think he denied his blackness. He shredded himself of his identity. But when you have people like Oneige Waldron and Hugh Tudd and Mark Phillips and Polori Joe, Joseph Hamilton, who are in the PPP, but who don't see the black population as their constituents in the PPP. So what they do is defend the racism. They defend the racism. They defend the atrocities. With a straight face, they defend the murder, the slaughter, extrajudicial killing of over 1,400 young black men. They don't talk about it. They don't call for justice. They sit in the PPP like traitors to their foreparents. And they condone mistreatment, injustice, and abuse of their own people. Keep sharing the link. So I want to talk about that. And I want you to hear with your own ears and see with your own eyes the betrayal of some blacks in the PPP, who, in order to maintain favor in the PPP, have shredded themselves of their black identity. They're like, I'm not black, I'm PPP. I am not black. That's what Barrett and the others inculcated in them. They're not black. They're PPP, or I am Guyanese. They have to shed their identity as a descendant of slaves in order to be accepted in the PPP and maintain favor and good standing. God forbid some one of those 5 black ministers said to Bar Jagdeo, there is need for an investigation. There is need for us to review the awarding of contracts to only East Indians. No. They can't say that because they'll be kicked out of the PPP. Keep sharing the link, everybody. So what they do, they defend it or they stay quiet. And that's my focus tonight. Because intriguing is not the word. Treacherous. It's treachery. They're traitors. Our ancestors would be ashamed of them. You know, they had some slaves who sold out the majority of the slaves to the masters. The slaves killed some of them and so on. And there were always some slaves who spied on the people who worked for the revolution, like Coffee and so on, and received payments, rewards, incentives. They were induced. We have those. We even have some of them in the diaspora. But I continue to be it's not intrigue is the word I'm looking for. I'm discombobulated by efforts by people who know the truth, know the facts, to facilitate the people who want to further enslave us into our midst. They accommodate, they facilitate, they ingratiate these people into our communities. There's nothing wrong with, I'm speaking directly about what happened in Brooklyn Friday. Nothing wrong with a president coming into a community, but there is a particular pomposity and arrogance about people in the PPP, whose message is, I can kill you to silence you. I can kill your people to silence them. And I can get away with it. And I can come into your community, pay some people some money, bribe them, or promise them stuff, induce them, and they will bring me into your community, and you can't do anything about it. That's the way I feel. The arrogance and the pomposity. Now, if you're going to facilitate the invaders, the slave masters, the imperialists, if you're going to facilitate the modern day ones, if you are like Orphan and Bar Jackdale, if you are, keep sharing the link, if you are going to facilitate them, challenge them about the injustices, challenge them about the extrajudicial killings, challenge them about the abuse of government to attack our people who speak out on their own behalf. The people who are facilitating the apartheid rulers, the apartheid rulers like Ali, the people who are facilitating them have people speaking out for them, representing them. And they're under attack. Like me, I can boast about that. Like Mark Benchcap, like others. And they did not even challenge that. The government is telling them that I can come into the diaspora and kill you and serve you with anything and threaten to kill you. And nobody could do anything about it. And they're like, hey, Mr. President, Mr. That's called betrayal. And tonight I issue a warning. CGID issued a statement tonight, which I support. We can't support those people anymore. Some of them are my friends. But when it comes to my people, when it comes to atrocities committed by racists, apartheid rulers against our people, that trumps friendship. And I will speak out. So that's what I want to talk about. So everybody keep sharing the link. Keep sharing the link. Now, let me start with the first topic. Now, the United Nations 10 years ago, so to put everything in context, put certain things into context. So the United Nations decided to observe and celebrate the people of African descent for what we have endured over the centuries. And they decided to do it for a decade. And so they dedicated a decade to that. So the whole concept of the decade of people of African descent started in 2021 with the Third World Conference Against Racism, when it led to the adoption of the Durban Declaration and program for action. The Durban Declaration, in addition to declaring that the people of African descent have been victimized by slavery and continue to suffer as a result, called for the states to adopt specific steps to help combat racism, xenophobia, and to protect the victims during the International Year of the People of African Descent. 10 years later, the UN called for these efforts to be intensified. 2 years later, in December 2013, the United Nations resolved that on January 2015, the world launched the International Decade of People of African Descent. So that's how the decade started. And mind you, listen to what the decade is for. It was for states, countries around the world, members of the United Nations, member countries of the United Nations, to adopt specific steps to help combat racism, xenophobia, and protect Black people in their populations from racism, abuse, injustices, etc. That's what this decade was for. In Guyana, under the Granger administration, lots of funds. And I'm expecting Mark Benchcroft to join the program sometime before it ends. Funds were budgeted for the decade to promote our culture, celebrate our culture, promote equality, equity, and equal treatment of people of African descent. As soon as the PPP came into power, they attacked it. They defunded. In Guyana, they created an assembly. Most of the Black organizations came together and formed an organization called International Decade of People of African Descent, Guyana. But because the organization has been speaking out about the atrocities Black people face in Guyana, they became the enemy of Barry Jagdeo. Barry Jagdeo instructed the government to defund them, take away the funds budgeted for by the Granger administration. As though Black people is not part of Guyana. I got to talk the raw. We're not entitled to no funds from the oil reserve, so take it away. When they realized it looked bad, they tried to create a parallel organization. Well, we blasted that. We blasted that. And they ran it into the wayside. They hide in. But Barrett Jagdeo personally and other members of his government set out to destroy IPADG, to destroy AGDA by taking away the funding, take away the funding from Christian Labor College of Black College, run by the Trade Unions Congress to train workers. So in the decade When the world was asking governments to protect the rights of people of African descent, to end discrimination and racial victimization, and to recognize and celebrate the people and end xenophobia against Black people in Guyana, the racist apartheid PPP rulers like Barack Jagdeo and Irfan Ali were taking steps to victimize us by taking away government funding for Black organizations. And you got Black people right in there, like Mark Phillips, upholding that. Keep sharing the link, everybody. So every Black institution in Guyana that speaks out about racial discrimination by the PP government, the government attacks and tries to break up. Now, what you think they've done? They went to the registrar where at the courts where not-for-profit organizations are registered and told them, take Ipajiji off the list. So, I mean, they go hard, eh? You and them follow, they tell, take your business license away, take your license to do business, to import, export. I mean, that's the PPP. And there's no argument they do it to Black people only. Or if you're East Indian or Amerindian or mixed and you associate with the PPP, they do that to punish you for associate with the opposition. They do it to punish you for your association with Black people. And let me song this to Bar Jack, Dave. The campaign is coming up. The campaign is coming up. And we're not going to allow you to bribe Black people and buy your way through. After you don't tell we live in basements and that Black people are criminals. So we want Bar Jack there to know. I want him to know that we will match his viciousness in the campaign. Heads up. We're going to remind the people of the Henry Blois brothers that you PPP people murdered. We're going to remind the people about Quindon Bacchus, whose murder y'all defended. We will remind the people that you went into the home and killed Orin Boston in his house in Essequibo. We remind the people that you all murdered Quindon Bacchus, because it's an East Indian police officer, you all defended it. The only time the PPP backs Black people is when they could get something out of it. And those in their circle, they keep them because they want to use them as trophies to show the world, hey, we got Black people here. Hey, we got Onish Waldron. And we got Mark Phillips, Utah. They're not say in the government, except that they're in a position to carry out their statutory responsibilities. They're making no decision. So, representing IPADG at the United Nations Forum in Geneva, Switzerland last week were Attorney at Law Darren Wade, Attorney at Law Nigel Hughes, Miss Olive Sampson, the Executive Director of IPADG, and some others. Mr. Hughes, and Miss Sampson spoke. And the government responded. The first insult is that they sent an East Indian racist from the PPP in the crew, among their representative, the government. Polori Joe, Onish Waldron, 2 black ministers in the PPP government, and Nia Saban. They actually sent Saban to mine. You know what's mining? They do it in socialist countries where they embed one of their own people to monitor what the black people do. So Barton Orphan trust Onish Waldron and in trust Joe, Polori Joe, to go as black people in the PPP to sit with them other black people around the world. No, we don't trust them. We got to send one of our people because East Indian supremacy reigns in the PPP. So they have to send one of their East Indian racists to monitor them to make sure they don't say anything out of the way to embarrass the government. Right? That's why they send them. So anyway, here is my friend and brother, Nigel Hughes, speaking at the International Decade about what is the situation that black people face in Guyana.
Thank you. Next, we have Nigel Hughes from International Decade for People of African Descent Assembly, Guyana.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. The following statement is presented by the International Decade for People of African Descent Assembly, Guyana, IPADG. IPADG comprises 78 non-governmental organizations and is committed to the pursuit of the goals of the decade. However, the government of Guyana seeks to decimate it by defunding the organization without merit or justification. In Guyana, the contribution of the people of African descent to its post-emancipation development in particular is either not recognized or is subject to degrading revisionism. We draw attention to this body to the concluding observations of the recent Human Rights Committee hearing on Guyana under the ICCPR in 2024, and I quote, "The committee remains concerned about the absence of comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation that may extend beyond discrimination in employment, provide full and effective protection against all forms of discrimination prohibited under the covenant, including direct, indirect, and multiple discrimination," unquote. African Guyanese are its daily victims. The Durban Declaration of 2001 and the United Nations Declaration of 2013, respectively, call for the inclusion of history in its school curricula, a victim-centered approach to its delivery. Practical measures such as the teaching young people the importance of tolerance and respect and the promotion of greater knowledge and the respect for diverse heritage, culture, and contribution of the people of African descent. Unfortunately, the United Nations call has not been heeded by the government of Guyana. This has resulted in the perpetuation of an identity crisis, non-recognition, injustices, and underdevelopment of the people of African descent writ large. This adds up to systemic discrimination. In Guyana, even the courtesy of a meeting with the government to advocate for a plan of action for the decade and the introduction of history of the people of African descent into the school curricula in particular has been denied. The forum is therefore challenged to call upon the state parties to redress this injustice, and in that regard, IPADG, I thank you.
Thank you, Naja. Next, we have Adriana.
So that's Nigel speaking the truth. Truth to power. Truth to power. They defunded IPADG, they can't deny it. They don't want Black history. They're like the Republicans in this country. They're trying to revise the books that spoke about how Black people were treated in Guyana. It's a movement among people of a certain ilk, a certain thinking, that are more in par with slave masters. We see it in this country. The PPP's thinking, Barry Jagdeir's thinking is more aligned with the slave masters than Black people. Their morality is the morality of apartheid rule, where Black people and their contributions must be diminished. That's what Barry Jagdeir believes. And I want the people of Guyana to put it in their minds and process it. Process it. Process it. When you see Barrett, you see slave master. And put your minds back to what your foreparents faced as slaves. When they challenged the slave master, they were tied to the trees and hung. That's what Barry Jagdeir did to over 1,400 Black people. He used a death squad to lynch them. So I don't have to tell you what should be your reaction to Barry Jagdeir, because that reaction should be the same reaction that Black people faced in America and around the world to people who lynched them. I, for one, know that someday there must be justice for those lynchings. So Ipalaje took that message to Geneva for the world to hear. Because there's a deficiency in the way the anti-government forces in Guyana communicate to the world. People don't know what's happening in Guyana. Everybody's like, oh, Arfida is doing such a wonderful job. Guyana's gotten oil and we're booming. Keep sharing the link, everybody. But the world doesn't know why we have an incompetent political opposition that all they do is fight among themselves, and they don't represent the interests of the people, and they don't focus on the government enough. They focus internally. And supporters must tell them that you've had enough of their nonsense, and it's time the opposition get their act together, and so that they could communicate to the world what is really happening to Guyana, what is really happening to their political constituents. In the meantime, people like CGID and Ipalaje got to take up the mantle, because we have an incompetent political opposition. Make no apologies for saying that. And anybody in the opposition who want to challenge me can challenge me. Let's have a go at it. So coming back to Ipalaje, this was the response from Onish Waldron. She is the PPP's representative. So you had the decade, the Assembly of People of African Descent in Guyana sent to represent a delegation, and the government sent a delegation. Here is Minister Onish Waldron responding, and then I'll play Miss Olive Sampson's response, because she represented the people of African descent in Guyana. And Onish Waldron is a minister of the government. She's Black, but this is what she had to say.
Venezuela. So let us go to the next speaker, the Republic of Colombia. They are not here yet. So we go to Guyana. Guyana.
Thank you, Madam. I reiterate Guyana's support for this forum and the objectives of the Durban Declaration. We recognize that this forum provides a valuable outlet for the voices of those who would otherwise be invisible and powerless. Thus, we support the opportunity that it affords for truly marginalized Afro communities the world over to be seen and heard. In this vein, we recognize the right of all to come here and to speak their truth, as eloquently expressed by our African Guyanese sister who spoke yesterday from the esteemed position of chair of the Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent. As the government of Guyana, our truth is that we reject entirely as false and baseless the allegations made at this session by representatives of IPAGI. Our truth is that African Guyanese organizations under IPAGI's umbrella complained to us that they were not receiving benefits from the $500 million government provided to IPAGI. Our truth is that we found that the money we provided was substantially consumed by administrative overheads. We therefore opted to provide financing directly to the beneficiary organizations, who in turn are free to pay over to IPAGI if they think IPAGI worthy of their confidence. So they will speak their truth and we must speak ours. We expect that the United Nations and its institutions, as objective and impartial observers, will draw their own conclusions. It is self-evident that institutions of the UN can only be successful if they enjoy the confidence of all legitimate stakeholders, including member states and representatives of civil society. It is thus imperative that those entrusted with mandates from the Secretary General take care lest by their words and actions they impair the confidence that we must all be able to place in institutions of the United Nations. Madam Chair, I regret that my remarks this afternoon were unavoidably dominated by these matters. I would have preferred to focus on our collective objectives as persons of African descent. Despite this, please remain assured of the unwavering commitment and support of the Government of Guyana to this forum and its work towards realizing full respect for the human rights of people of African descent everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
This black house slave, I actually wanted to avoid saying that she was a house slave. But this black house slave, PPP house slave, went to the United Nations and she could not outline one policy, one achievement of the government for black people to empower black people. Specifically, not on national this, we increased wages by 6% and we built a bridge and we did this and we did that. No, she could not outline one damn policy, benefit to empower black people in Guyana. Not one. But instead, she went there, they used her as a political prostitute, a black fool, to tear down a black organization. I want to say so much, but I'm not going to say nothing more. Mark is here. Let me bring in Mark and have Mark respond to what Onish Waldron just said. Mark, welcome to the show.
Yes, good night, Rickford. Good night to your listeners as well. I've heard the adjectives used to describe Onish Waldron. And what you fail to say to your audience is that you are related to Onish Waldron. Good. But I just thought I let them know that you are related to her, the Waldrons from the quarantine and so forth. And a position has to be taken whether we related to people or not, or whether we are friends with individuals. You mentioned early in your program that the culprits in Brooklyn who disrespected the people of Brooklyn by bringing in an individual like Irfan Ali to just a quick photo op, pretending as though he was cutting some guy's hair in the barbershop, jump on some Big Ben riding a bicycle.
Before you get into that, we gotta talk about that. Before you get into that, because that's a juicy subject, I want you to specifically respond to what Onish Waldron said.
Oh, you want me to respond to what you're...
Were you able to hear the video recording?
I heard it. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to you. And I am almost certain that it doesn't make sense to 99.9% of your viewers, your listeners right now on this show. Onage Waldron doesn't represent persons of African descent in Guyana. What she does is represent herself. She has been given a position as a form of tokenism. She has accepted it, and she's representing only her interest. When she's in Guyana, she doesn't represent the interest of Guyanese, neither does she represent the interest of persons of African descent. We saw all the the evidence of all the atrocities, what African folks, Guyanese, experienced in the village of Mocha, when women and their businesses were torn down. Women were basically assaulted by members of the Guyana police force and so forth. Onage Waldron didn't have a voice then. We saw a woman's house being broken down, ripped down in Linden. Onage Waldron didn't get a voice then. And the atrocities and the discrimination, mainly against persons of African descent in Guyana, Onage Waldron never once spoke out against those atrocities. We've had individuals such as Quindon Bacchus, Mr. Boston, Orrin Boston and Headley, and all these other persons who were slaughtered by members of the Guyana police force. Onage Waldron didn't have a voice then. Joe Hamilton didn't have a voice then. In fact, they are part of an oppressive regime that continues to oppress Guyanese, but more so discriminating and oppressing persons of African descent. So to listen to someone like Onage Waldron, who has something hanging over her head in terms of explaining to the public whether at the time she became a minister and a member of parliament, whether she was still a citizen of the United States of America. So that is still hanging over her head. So all the things that they've said there at Geneva ought to be dismissed. I know Guyanese are smart people, especially also since this is directed against, they claim to be representing persons of African descent. No one, absolutely no one is buying it.
You spoke of that incident in Mocha, and I want to remind people of Mocha and what took place there. Let me I'm going to share.
And the people, Rickford, before you get to that, the people in Mocha take umbrage to their village, their beautiful village, Mocha, being described as Mocha, when in fact it's Mocha Arcadia. Thank you.
Right. Let me see. I'm trying to bear with me here. I'm trying to.
A bit rusty.
Now I'm trying to get this video, so let me see. Let me see if I can get it. All right, let me. All right, good. There you go. But in the meantime, what do you think of the president coming into Brooklyn as you started to? I want to play this video, so I want you to take up the time while I search for it.
Thank you.
What do you think about the president coming into Brooklyn and people running behind him and giving him all of this praise and glory without holding him to account for their atrocities?
First of all, I wish to ask, you said, what do I think of the president? What president are you referring to?
The installed president.
No, I do not describe Irfad Ali as the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and I'm not going to do it tonight here. But he moved into Brooklyn. Before we get to that, Mr. Burke, I know this is your show, and I'm being accused sometimes of taking over people's show. But Rickford, what happened? How you sat in Brooklyn and allowed this guy to march into Brooklyn like a thief in the night, went to Hills, went to these other places. Where were you, Rickford, locked away in your basement?
I was busy taking care of my business.
Where were you?
I had no time to run behind her.
Allow that, Rickford. Talk to us.
Mark, I'm not the mayor of Brooklyn.
No, we
I can't control who goes and comes in Brooklyn.
But you said not so long ago that We control Brooklyn. Nobody gonna come into Brooklyn and nobody this, nobody. But yet the man walked into Brooklyn like a thief.
I don't recall. But Mark, thank you for being there though. Thank you for being there and standing up for me. Were you there? What happened? Tell us.
Everybody knows I'm a former resident of Brooklyn. I'm not
okay.
But were I in Brooklyn, I'm telling you.
Oh, you weren't there. I see.
I would have crawled out of my basement and I would have made a bunch of noise that man would have had to walk out of Brooklyn. No way I would have been there and allowed that to happen. But that's okay. They caught you sleeping. You got caught sleeping. Let's head to your question, the question that you asked. And even NAR, the North American Association, the PNC group and all these people who oftentimes have a big voice. Nobody was there. Nobody. We saw one woman was trying to ask a question and they kind of booed her. Oh, no, now is not the time. Her name is Bonita. But you ask a question while I was trying to put you on the spot and you crawl out of it. But that's okay. What's your question again, sir?
The question is, what's your view of people in the diaspora facilitating these types of fly-by-day visits for photo op, rather than I have the video. Let us look at the video about Mocha and then come back to that.
Before you get to the video, I noticed somebody corrected me that Mocha is different from Mocha Arcadia. All right, yeah, go ahead. Show your video.
All right, let's start the video. Let's play the video.
This was a scene at KNV Mocha Arcadia today as the Ministry of Housing, accompanied by members of the riot squad of the Guyana Police Force, moved to demolish the structures occupied by squatters who failed to accept the compensation offered by the government. The Housing Ministry said the land on which the persons are on form part of the construction of the Eccles to Great Diamond Highway. Shots were fired by the police and persons were arrested, while angry residents threw bricks, bottles, and flammable objects at the police. At one point, the excavator caught fire.
What did them do? Like, me want to talk no more, man. It does everything damaged. Them telling me for coming one by one. Them saying that we house ward. In these hard times, when you can pay 6 million or 5 million or 2 million for these things, they know. Then what's expensive? Nails expensive, board expensive, everything gone high. We bed broke up. Everything broke up. What I sleep. Then the rain wet me up. If I take I the road. I'm a homeless girl now. Now I'm a homeless girl.
And this is totally wrong what the people doing. This is totally wrong. These people need to give we justice. 20-something years now we family live over here, boss. Actually 30 years now. Where we going?
The area was surrounded by the police and housing officials who were executing the exercise. They first started by removing the bridge and then this house and business place. The owner was standing her ground against the demolition when she was arrested and dragged through the mud by the police. For several minutes, she and the police wrestled until she decided to go. Moments later, her house came crashing down. The operator did not stop there. He destroyed all the beverages and other items the woman had for sale. Some were covered by the debris. By this time, some squatters started to remove their household, livestock, and other items. Opposition leader Orby Norton arrived on the scene and tried to reason with the police and the housing officials.
Why can't they meet in a civilized way?
Things got heated as the exercise continued, with residents pelting the police who returned fire. Opposition MP Roysdale Ford, Coretta MacDonald and other MPs were on hand to see the destruction.
What we see happening here is transgression to the max, oppression to the max. And I'm saying people will have to stand up at some point for their rights, because we cannot allow history to keep repeating itself.
There's more than just a possibility. I believe that there's a high probability that legal proceedings will have to be instituted by the people who would have been suffering, by the families who have been suffering this sort of demolition and complete destruction to the property. And it's just simply beyond that level. I believe that serious questions have been raised and we will examine them. We're in the process of gathering a number of pieces of information and documents that go towards the legal ownership of this land as to who actually owns it, whether this is in fact land for which the government, even if they want to build a road, it should be subject to the Constitution, should be subject to the payment of compensation to persons who are the owners of this land. So we are currently in the process of examining those issues, and we will definitely be instituting proceedings if it is found that it is necessary to do so. But in my view, having regard to what I've seen here, what I've learned over the last couple of days, this is a serious case that will require some degree of legal representation on the part of these people who suffered, and you see what's happening, complete destruction to their livelihood. But this is a complete demolition to their lives. I believe it is extremely insensitive. When it occurred in Linden, when it occurs in other parts of the country, it is against the rights of the people, not because that they're squatters in the eyes of the government, not because they can't produce a title to property. This is completely against the law. They have no right to demolish homes, especially to demolish homes in the manner in which they're doing. This reminds us of the situation in apartheid South Africa, the demolition of homes and communities. And the government here would have signed all sorts of treaties. I don't know whether they don't read them, whether they don't pay attention to them in terms of the rights of people and the rights of persons to live, even in homes that are not necessarily on legal land owned by them.
This is what is left of the houses when the exercise was completed, as persons contemplate their next move and start all over again. Many of those whose houses were demolished lived on the land between 16 to 30 years.
Let me say this before I bring Mark in. What happened there is exactly what happened in South Africa under the apartheid regime, when they demolished homes by black people. And the government said that they were moving these people because a road had to pass there. Road didn't pass there yet, you know. The road built somewhere else. We know what they cleared those people there for. The road is nearby, the new highway, so they want to take that land and give it to their East Indian supporters to build businesses and lavish homes, but we watching them. And I fought the opposition for saying certain things. The opposition needs to tell these people that whenever, I don't care if it's tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years, whenever they go into power, they're going to take back those lands and give them back to the people. Take back those lands and give them back to the people. Before you come in, Mark, let's listen to Olive Sampson from Ipajdi speaking about these very issues.
Thank you. I pass the floor to Olive Sampson, International Decade for People of African Descent, Guyana.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I speak today on behalf of the International Decade for the People of African Descent, Assembly Guyana. We call for the second decade as necessary for our survival in Guyana. Funding is critical and should come directly from the UN and its agencies. Organizations working towards fulfilling the goals of the decade should not be subject to the whims and fancies of governments who only pay lip service to its goals. The current government of Guyana never articulated a plan or instituted any policy, nor did it promote any dedicated program for the decade. As evidence of the government's disregard for the decade, it has arbitrarily and vindictively suspended funding for IPADG, a community-based institution focused on the goals of the decade. It instead offered cash grants to some IPADG member organizations, sidestepping the overarching transformative purpose of the decade while mimicking the colonial divide and rule strategy. Instead of pursuing the goals of the decade, the government of Guyana has chosen to preside over the increased oppression and marginalization of African Guyanese through extrajudicial killings, bulldozing and demolition of homes and businesses, displacement of African Guyanese from their communities, and land grabs and other atrocities. In lieu of the preservation and teaching of our history and culture, we have witnessed their suppression and the imposition of a demoralizing, contrived narrative such as the road Guyana has traversed, submitted by the government in response to UN special communications on the marginalization of African Guyanese. Instead of economic development, we have seen poverty wages for the majority of African descendant public service, refusal to negotiate with their unions, discrimination in contracting. Most African Guyanese are experiencing rising poverty in Guyana's booming oil economy. In this new decade, people of African descent must be protected by declaration on the promotion, protection, and full respect of the human rights of people of African descent. For example, the persistent and continuing sexual abuse and harassment of African Guyanese women by high-ranking male ministers of government in their official capacities in Parliament must cease. The protective mantle of the second decade is urgently needed to save the African Guyanese community.
Thank you. I remind the speakers to please stay within the 2 minutes. We do have a very long list. I will pass the floor.
You heard the applause. The people in that assembly got the message. They know what is going on, just like the United Nations commissioners knew what was going on. Mark, before you come in, I heard Irfan Ali right now is live cursing me out. I would respond to him. I hopefully I can somebody can send me the link. And he's cursing me out because CGID issued a statement tonight, this evening, condemning people who condoned Ali at their establishments or whatever without holding him accountable. Now, I'm going to come back to the statement, Mark. Hopefully we can get it live, or hopefully we can get the recording or something, and we'll respond. But can you respond to the newscast just now? We saw the brutality meted out to those people in Mocha, and Ms. Sampson's response to Onit Waldron.
Yeah, before I do respond, let me just acknowledge, maybe this is the first time I'll let folks know that you have someone in your audience there, my stepson, at least used to be my stepson, Fazil Mirza. He's cussing us out now. Fazil Mirza, please give my regards to the family. I don't know why you're cursing us out just like that. I'm sorry that I had to leave the family just like that, but I'll send a nice barrel for you guys and continue. Faisal Mirza is saying Rickford and Benchop are too blah, 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 blah. You know, the bombs raising. Having said that, though.
We'll ask the moderator to address that.
You got to throw the trench crappos them in the trenches. But there's nothing much to add from what was said there at the forum there in Geneva. I think the last speaker there, Ms. Sampson, addressed it quite eloquently, and it is something that people have been saying over the past 4 years since the PPP was installed into office. They continue to discriminate persons of African descent. They terminated the service, the employment of over 5,000, I believe, individuals when they got installed back on August 2nd, 2020. So the evidence is glaring. The entire Guyana saw what they did to the people of Mocha Arcadia, and somebody said Mocha Arcadia, say Mocha, and they saw what they did to the people of Linden. They continue to see and witnessed the atrocities throughout Guyana, mainly against our African brothers and sisters. And they also do that against our Indian brothers and sisters who do not fall in bed with them. And so they go after persons, they discriminate, they threaten, and all manner of things. And so I can't disagree with what Dr. Sampson said there. I'm in full support of her participation, her contribution there at the Geneva Convention. And with all of these evidence that have been presented, Rickford, it beats me as to why those individuals in Brooklyn felt so brave that they are going to invite, of all persons, they are going to invite Irfan Ali into Brooklyn, invite him into Brooklyn to meet and greet and shake hands and ride bicycle and eat little food. I don't know what to say. I'm disappointed with those who assisted in organizing, and I join with anybody who calls for the boycotting of those businesses until, mind you, until those individuals, the proprietress of the Hills, forget about German restaurant up Utica Avenue. I've seen you drinking soup there before. I'm not sure if you're going to go back there. And there are other places too.
Mark, you see me drinking soup there. Stop it. I go there though, but not to drink soup there.
So let me ask you something. Will you go back there as of...
Go back where?
To Germans on Utica Avenue.
Well, I don't know what happened at Germans. Was the president there?
Yeah, well, I don't know about the president or which president, but Irfan was there. So the target should not just be the Hills. This is a widespread thing.
No. Anybody, listen, this is my position. I am not objecting to the president go, and I want us to be made very clear. Can somebody get me the tape of what Ali is saying? Because I understand he's live now addressing us as we speak, or addressing the statement we issued. So anybody in Guyana, those technical guys, get me the tape of his remarks. Mark, I sent it to you. So I'm not sure if you couldn't. They blocked me from the website he's speaking on.
When I'm with you, whether in your communities, on the ground, or just sitting around with you, discussing ideas and discussing the future of our country. Yes, there are challenges, there are opportunities, but under the One Guyana umbrella, we have committed ourselves to facing these challenges together, understanding the shared prosperity that lies ahead of us, and working as hard as we can together so that all of us can inherit this beautiful Guyana, a Guyana in which all our aspirations, all our hope, and all our dreams can be realized. Not as 6 different people. Yes, celebrating our ethnic diversity, but achieving prosperity, building our country, and developing our country together as one Guyana family, as a Guyanese family. It was such an honor. It was a great privilege for me to spend a day visiting members of our diaspora in Brooklyn and Queens. When I was in Brooklyn and Queens, I felt the love of what Guyana offers. I felt the collective strength of our people, wanting only what is best for our country. And I thank all of you for the love that you showed to me and for saying to me that you want us to work together. You want us to build together. And I'm very pleased that I had the opportunity to meet all of you. The more than 13% of the King's, the hospital in Brooklyn, 13% of the staff, a staff of 5,500, being Guyanese, celebrating your work, being proud of you. I was so proud to hear the stories from CEOs and leaders in the Brooklyn and Queens area talking about the contribution of Guyanese to that society, to the healthcare, the education, the community service. I was even much more satisfied to come to your establishment, the way you welcomed me to your businesses all across New York, in Brooklyn and in Queens, allowing me to come into your premise to see and celebrate with you what you have achieved. Those are things that make us stronger. I assure you that I left strengthened in my resolve, and this government resolve to achieve the agenda of One Guyana, to build out and continue to strengthen the agenda of One Guyana. Make no mistake, no detractors, no haters, no racists, no one who seeks selfishly to derail this agenda, no one with a separatist narrative, no one with a hidden agenda would be allowed to shake my strong belief in the Guyanese people and in our ability to achieve One Guyana and to achieve prosperity for every single family. However, I found myself compelled to respond tonight, not because I want to respond to any individual, for I have no time on my agenda to waste behind racist, separatist propagandists. I have no time in my agenda to lose energy behind those who cannot see anything from a different window than the window of racism. But tonight, I respond to these individuals, my brothers and sisters, because of the hurt they're trying to instill in the people, in the ordinary people, in you, the people of Brooklyn, who came out. And what are you guilty of? You are guilty of welcoming a president. You are guilty, according to him, of sharing love. You're guilty of being civil. You're guilty of showing the true Guyanese spirit. You're guilty of coming together. You're guilty of rejecting racism. You're guilty of rejecting hate, according to his narrative. They issued a complete press release, this CGID, condemning hard-working, honest Guyanese. And what are you guilty of? It hurts me to know that people and organizations who claim to love can be so divisive, can be so self-centered and selfish, that they can issue statements calling for the boycott of businesses, boycott of your economic well-being, boycott of your economic welfare. How low can you get? If you have something against me, come after me with all that you have. Point all your guns and weapons to me, but leave the people out of this. Do not seek to destroy the lives of ordinary people. Do not seek to separate our people. The experience of 1950, when we were separated for selfish reasons, driven by external forces, must be corrected. And make no mistake, this president and this government is going to correct it. We are going to bring our people together. We are going to unite this country, and we are going to build prosperity for every home. But don't do this to the ordinary people. Don't point the gun of hate. Don't point the poison of hate from your arrows to the ordinary people. Do not do this to them. They are guilty of nothing. All that they want is to share their ideas, share their vision, share an opportunity to interact, to ensure that the country they love, that their love for their country is bigger than anyone's selfish desire to divide us. No right-thinking person can agree with a narrative, the live narrative on the Burks, or the statement that was issued. And I call on all the elected officials, whether it's Mr. Hakeem Jeffries, Mr. Meeks, I call on them to examine the actions of this group against ordinary Afro-Guyanese, to examine the action that this group is perpetuating against the businesses. And all that they did was to show love. We are ordered to show love. We are ordered to demonstrate love to our neighbors. To the people of Brooklyn, I'm grateful and I understand deeply the sacrifice you made. Queens, New York, and Brooklyn, I thank you sincerely. Your outpouring of love uplifted me even to a greater place, motivate me and my government to renew and redouble our efforts to bring prosperity to every home, to encircle every Guyanese family in the strength of love, in the bosom of love. What is so difficult? How can you, and you know the hypocrisy of it, is that these very individuals, they love to carry the narrative that the president comes, he would never come to Brooklyn. He has no time with the people of Brooklyn. But the president was with the people of Brooklyn, and then that too is a problem. Then that becomes an issue. And let me say this. Let me say this in protection of the integrity of those persons who walked with me. None of them were paid. They did not even ask for a bottle of water. They offered me water. They offered me food. They offered everyone around food and water. And to belittle these people, to attack them by saying that they were paid stooges. This cannot be the type of people who put their hands up in the air and call themselves leaders. This cannot be people of dignity and integrity. This cannot be people who claim to represent the truth when you, the people, know the truth. But this is just an exposure of who they are. This is an awakening for all the persons in our diaspora to see through the shallow window that they operate from. This is an opportunity for you at this moment to redouble your commitment to the One Guyana principle.
All right, Mark. So I think I've heard enough. Let me, first of all, since he attacked CGID and he said Burke, let me read the CGID statement that was issued this afternoon. The Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy noted that the installed president of Guyana, Irfan Ali, snuck into Brooklyn for a so-called walkabout without the permission of the U.S. State Department as diplomatic norms require. The few persons who, out of curiosity, ventured to the area where he was, reported that he and his facilitators were rude and condescending to persons who attempted to ask questions. Let me repeat that. The few persons who, out of curiosity, ventured to the area where he was, reported that he and his facilitators were rude and condescending to persons who attempted to ask questions. The board of directors and members of CGID are disappointed that individuals in the diaspora who are aware of the racism, the corruption, the racial discrimination, extrajudicial killings, injustice, atrocities of the people of the PPP and the Ali Jagdeh regime, that the PPP and the Ali Jagdeh regime committed against Afro-Guyanese were stunningly silent when presented with an opportunity to hold Ali accountable. This is an egregious betrayal of Black people. This is an egregious betrayal of Black people. Their sucking up to Ali and refusal to hold him accountable undermines the fight for justice and efforts to hold Ali and the PPP regime accountable for their racism, racial discrimination, and other atrocities, which CGID and others in the diaspora stand in the line of fire fighting for each day. CGID will not support and will boycott anyone in the New York diaspora who fails to hold the Ali regime apartheid, Ali Jagder apartheid regime accountable for the killing of over 400 young Black men, their racism, their racial discrimination, and injustices against people of African descent. And we stand by that statement. First of all, so nowhere in that statement talk about Black stooges. I know where you get that from. They like to invent things. But let me respond to him as the president of CGID. First of all, I have no issues with the president, and CGID has no issues with the president of Guyana, so-called president of Guyana, going into the Guyanese community to talk with Guyanese. No problem with that. What we have a problem with is that persons facilitate him. Persons who, in his absence, talk about the racism, talk about the racial discrimination, talk about the atrocities, talk about the extrajudicial killings. They talk about it. So when our statement says, when they had an opportunity to hold him accountable, they did not. Because if he is there visiting you, that's the perfect opportunity for you to talk about the racism, to demand an investigation, to demand an explanation. Demand an explanation for the Boston killing. Why the Henry Boyce investigation has not progressed. Why the people in Mocha were abused. Why 1,400 Black people were killed and there's been no investigation. That's what we're talking about. Why didn't they talk about people from the opposition who attend rallies and speak out, are held at the airport for 9 and 7 hours when they go home and harassed? Why didn't they speak out about them framing me in Guyana, all the way in New York, and sending gunmen to my home, sending people to kill me? The FBI is investigating that. They sent a police officer who's a known death squad person to Brooklyn to trace me and was trying to hire people to kill me. What the hell are these talking about? And we don't have a right to be upset? Why didn't they hold him accountable? Why wasn't Bonita allowed to ask her question? That's what we're talking about. We don't care if you want to go and walk among people in Kings County Hospital. That's what we're talking about. We want them to hold him accountable. So I want all the Black people in the PPP to talk about these things. I want the CARICOM heads to condemn him for failing to address the needs and empowerment requirements for Black people. Why doesn't the CARICOM heads condemn him for failing to make sure that there's accountability and justice for all of the Black people they killed? Only now they want to come to Black people? Only now they want to come to Black people? They've been coming to this country all the time. Not once. They've been coming to the Black community. All they want to do is go and take a photograph with Black people. Empower Black people. Give them contracts. Don't come to our community and pose with 2 people, take a couple people picture and put it on Facebook and talk about one Guyana. Act it. That's my response. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, and well said, Rickford. What Efrad said there, and you know, he's preaching violence. He is calling on people. He's basically trying to set us up to say that people want to turn their weapons. They could turn their guns. They could turn this on him. That's what he's saying. He said that. That is dangerous for anyone who sits there as head of state to make those sort of assertions. That is, again, now his crocodile tears. Oh, we want peace. Oh, we want unity. No, all he wanted was a photo op. And unfortunately, those individuals, the proprietors of the Hills and others, facilitated that. And shame on those individuals. We are, at least I've, through my Facebook page, through CGID, you guys have called for those businesses to be boycotted. Nothing is wrong with that, because you cannot sit with the oppressors and pretend as though you're representing our interests or the people's interest in Brooklyn. Those people have disrespected. Forget about Irfan Ali. We know he doesn't have any regards. We know that he doesn't have any respect for persons of African descent. That's a fact. But those individuals in Brooklyn need to issue an apology with immediate effect. Some of those folks are my friends. And let me say this here. I was part of a committee to rename Utica Avenue from Eastern Parkway all the way down to maybe past Avenue D, to rename it Guyana Avenue. Some of those members who facilitated Irfan Ali there in Brooklyn are also part of that committee. I have, with immediate effect, removed myself from that committee. I have, with immediate effect, removed myself from that WhatsApp group. It doesn't mean that I want nothing to do with the committee. We are close enough to having that entire stretch renamed Guyana Avenue. But I removed myself from the committee as a matter of principle, because those very individuals who invited or who facilitated Irfan Ali there in Brooklyn, they also want to invite Irfan. Once the renaming of Utica Avenue to Guyana Avenue, they want to invite Irfan and Mark Phillips to the opening, to the cutting of the ribbons. And I have said to them that if Irfan Ali or Mark Phillips are going to be invited to that event, count me completely out of it. So these individuals have traits of sucking up to those oppressors in Guyana. I wish not to talk more about that particular issue, but I want members of the public to know that I withdrew. I'm no longer part of that committee, but I wish them well. We are just close enough to the renaming of Utica Avenue, Guyana Avenue. These people are disrespectful to Guyanese, and I'm in full support. Forget about what Irfan Ali is saying. I'm in full support of boycotting their businesses until they apologize to the Guyanese people in Brooklyn.
Well, thanks for that. And you see, this is the thing, right? Irfan Ali has never once, and I just spoke about it, never once had a meeting with the Black community. No, we don't deserve it. We are not Guyanese. Then if you can't meet with the Black people in Guyana, why come to the diaspora and try to meet with us?
You know,
that's my question. I want to meet Ali.
The other
I
thing
want
is,
to be clear now. Next time Ali come, he could ask to meet with me. I am willing to meet with him. And I am willing to ask him the hard questions. I will ask him why you took away the money from Ipadaji, why you took away the money from ACTA, why are you breaking up Black businesses?
You know, Rickford, you don't have to meet. Now is not the time to meet and shake these guys' hands and ask them these questions. They already know the questions. They ought to be they ought to answer this question. You have had your experience by shaking Mark Phillips' hands. It hasn't gotten.
I just said shake hands.
Don't ask for a meeting with these guys until you see evidence on the ground that they're treating all Guyanese equally. Are they doing that now? No, they're not. Are we against those individuals who have invited Irfan into Brooklyn, into their businesses and so forth? we are upset because under the circumstances, there should be absolutely no meeting with the oppressors until they set things right. And things are not right in Guyana, regardless of how we twist it and turn it. And I've seen some of those misguided individuals in Brooklyn there. I am a child of God, and they're explaining and it makes absolutely no sense, except that they have done a wrong. They have disrespected the people of Brooklyn, and the time has come for people of Brooklyn to respond. And how are you going to respond? Economically. Respond. Keep your money in your pockets until those individuals, the proprietress of the Hills and others, and including our good friend, Pastor James Richmond, and including our good friend, Sharif Barker, and those individuals, they need to apologize to the Brooklyn community. Enough is enough. We cannot take this impasse any longer. And regardless of what Irfan Ali is saying, forget about the crocodile tears. He doesn't care about African Guyanese in Guyana. He doesn't care about Guyanese in general, whether they're African Indians or indigenous. He doesn't care. What makes you guys think that he popping into Brooklyn, take a picture, ride a little bicycle, show off? He doesn't want to meet to sit down to have a proper, a professional, a respectable meeting with you guys. He just want to hop in, take a quick picture, eat a little pulori, eat a little food, drink a little sour, gaff up a little bit by the hills. Mind you, y'all keep an eye on the hills. Enough is enough. We cannot allow Irfan Ali to describe folks who disagree with him as extremist, as racist. You want to know what's racist, Irfan Ali? Take a look into the mirror. Take a look at your policies. Unemployment is the highest ever. The broken promises made by you and your corrupt regime, Irfan. You want to know what racism is? The 3,000 or 4,000 plus public servants who were sent home immediately after your regime was installed. You want to know about racism? Oh, I don't want to give you more examples of that. You know it all. So don't play the victim game now, the victim role, to make us look as though we are the bad guys, that we have no right to object. We have no right to criticize. We have no right to call you and your corrupt regime out. No, we're not going to accept that at all. Sorry about that. I just realized that it's your program.
Mark, and I want to specifically address the fact that Ali, called us racist because we're saying the people that facilitated him did not hold him accountable for racism in Guyana. We're racist.
We can't sit here and have the likes of a Claire Patterson and those guys and Mona and all of them to hold him accountable. One woman went there and she's brave enough, Bonita Montague, I believe. They shut her down. Those same people in Brooklyn, the few of them who are probably eating the king's meat, they shut down Bonita. They basically said to her, shut the hell up. So, and those are the people that we must protect. Those are the people that we must respect. No, boycott in full effect, guys. When you see those businesses, walk straight. They got to apologize to the people of Brooklyn.
And I want to follow up on this racism thing because that's their key, right? It's like Trump, they're projecting. Once you criticize their racism, you are racist, right? So you must not speak. They have a right to not give black people contracts, use the resources of the country, all the oil resources, only for their East Indian supporters. You must not say anything because if you say something, you call it a separatist, or I guess you want to say separatist. But you mustn't say anything. How dare you speak? You must sit there and know your place because this is servitude. Black people and apartheid.
They're out there disrespecting. I want, if they're going to have a delegation going to India to represent our Indian brothers and sisters in Guyana, I want to go on that delegation. I don't know if you want to go. Dr. Hines should go too. And this is the disrespect of this corrupt regime, you know. Imagine they sent to Geneva a guy by the name of Nias Suban to represent African Guyanese interests. That is the biggest disrespect.
And a racist. That victimizes black people.
I don't know.
The man, that same guy they sent there, right? He was a part of the Ethnic Relations Commission. When the PPP came to power, he tried to pass a motion for the Ethnic Relations Commission to ask the Attorney General to extradite Burke and Benchcop to Guyana so that they will deal with us because of what we said about the PPP during the campaign of 2020. So this man wants to terrorize black people. But this government got the balls, the gall, the effrontery to send him to the United Nations to represent black people. I mean, it's so disgraceful. And that's why I am angry, because those are the questions that the people who facilitated him should ask. It's your business. We're telling you what to do with your business. We're not telling you what to do with your business. What we're saying is if you have a business, you want to invite him into our community, a community where black people live, and this is America. We don't give a damn about what our fanatics say. In America, we talk about black people. It is not taboo.
And nobody's afraid of Irfan Ali and his bluff talks and go after him. Nobody wants to go after him. You see, he's saying these inciting remarks and all these manner of things. You know, the Ethnic Relations Commission need to take a check at him. But nobody has time with Irfan Ali. He's just a puppet. Even the people in Queens don't have time with Irfan. When was the last time did they sit down in Queens to have a nice town hall meeting? They no longer have that in...
But Mark, why did he have a town hall? Instead of going to the hills and going to Kings County Hospital, which President tours a hospital, unless you want to see the facilities and you plan to build a facility like that and you want your people to come and study how the hospital...
Report.
It's not like that. And so why didn't he do a town hall? You want to come to talk to people. Don't run in and sneak in the night and visit a couple places and then go away with a couple of people. I mean, and then don't allow people to ask questions. That's the thing. That's the thing. You're in our community. You're in our community. Allow the people to ask the pertinent questions so that they can hold you accountable. And that's why people are upset, because they shut down Bonita and others from asking him questions that would expose his duplicity.
You know, Irfan Ali, they have serious problems with hospitals in Guyana. Has he ever visited the Mackenzie or the Linden Hospital? No. Has he ever visited Port Morant Hospital? No. Has he ever visited New Amsterdam Hospital, Skeldon Hospital, Mybe Curie Hospital, Bartica Hospital? No. But he wants to hop up here because maybe he has a friend and the friend decided that they're going to go to Kings County Hospital to walk around and take photos. And he went there specifically to brainwash and to spread propaganda with those 13% of Guyanese nurses, as he claims, that are there, and invite them to Guyana to go at the hospitals and work for free whenever they have their vacations, to go to Guyana, go to the hospitals and work for free. But they're going all the way to Bangladesh to bring in hundreds of nurses and pay them, pay their salaries, pay their airfares, pay their rental.
Mark, you can't talk about it. That's racist. You can't point out that they bring in Indians from Bangladesh. Well, it's Bangladeshis, but they're Indians. East Indians.
Don't tell the Bangladeshis that they're Indians.
Well, they're East Indians. They're of Indian descent from the east part there of the world. And you see, this is the thing. Why didn't those people ask questions? Why didn't the nurses ask questions? The people who took him there asked questions about the death rate at the hospital, about the infant mortality rate at the hospital, the malfunction of equipment, certain things you can't get done at Georgetown Hospital. You got to go to a private institution, get the results, and bring it back to the doctor at Georgetown Hospital. Why weren't people allowed to ask those questions? And I want people to understand what I am saying. I am saying it's their business. It's a free country. They can do what they want with their business. We can do what we want with our money. But I'm saying allow people to ask the hard questions, because some of the people in Brooklyn that he's talking about have relatives that the PPP death squad killed in Guyana. And those people must be allowed to ask you why your PPP party, under the presidency of Barry Jagdeo, formed death squads to kill black people. They must face those questions. They must face why you break down the homes of the people at Mocha, why you drag that woman through the mud, and they can say it's racist, but it's a black woman. East Indians in Guyana, East Indian leaders would not allow the police force to drag an East Indian woman through the mud and break down her home and break up her produce, break up her beverages for sale, slaughter her cattle, and some of them bury them alive. Which East Indian leader in Guyana is going to allow that to happen? Why must we, as black people, not speak out about that?
One of the things, Rickford, is that we saw the hypocrisy all over those folks who were there, the few folks. And it is important. It is not something that I want to do or say, but we are forced to do that, to boycott those businesses. Do not support those businesses, whether they have a boat ride, whatever, until they apologize to the people of Brooklyn for what they have done. They have to apologize. So what Irfan Ali did there is Irfan Ali got calls from them who were saying, look what they're doing to me. Look what they're doing to us. And Irfan pretends as though that he could come out now to defend them, to score political points. He is not scoring any political points. Those of you who are in Brooklyn, you know what you have to do until those individuals, the proprietress of the Hills located on Church Avenue, right at the corner of Schenectady. You can't miss it. And other businesses. I hope our mutual friend, Pastor James Richmond, would come out and apologize to the people of Brooklyn. I hope Sharif Ann Barker will come out and do the same. I hope Claire Patterson of the Guyana Cultural Association and Mona will do the same. Enough is enough. We cannot accept it. This is not to say that if somebody is a legitimate president of Guyana, regardless of which party, that they cannot visit Brooklyn. Nobody's saying that. But because of the atrocities, the discrimination in Guyana, it is impossible and unacceptable for these guys to bring him, Irfan Ali, into Brooklyn, and everybody must greet him with open arms, and there wouldn't be any repercussions towards the businesses. Boycott those businesses.
Go ahead, Mark. I'm looking for the video of that lady from Mocha in the mud when the police dragged her. I'm looking for that video.
Yeah,
I want to play that video.
Okay. While you do that, let me just thank you, Rickford, because as you notice, I've got to go. Thank you so much. And to all of your listeners, let's keep hope alive. We cannot be bullied by Irfan Ali or the corrupt PPP regime. Thank you, Rickford, and good night to all of you.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Emma. So I want to play this video. And I want to ask, I'm looking for it, I'll get it. I want to ask why it is that Bonita was not allowed to ask questions. That's what I want. Why she was not allowed to ask questions. Now, I'm sure it's possible that maybe one of the questions she wanted to ask was this. I'm getting there. Bear with me. I'm getting there. I'm sure one of the questions she had to ask was, why the people, listen, Mocha has stood out with me. Let's go to the video.
That Chevron has millions of dollars. I want Banks DIH, I want Ansi McCall to know that Chevron has millions of dollars in our property. And if our property has been break today, well, see me and understand with me that I'm not responsible.
Why was she treated that way? I want to play back that tape.
That Chevron has millions of dollars. I want Banks DIH, I want Ansi McCall to know that Chevron has millions of dollars in our property. And if our property has been break today, well, see me and understand with me that I'm not responsible.
Now, Bonita Montague possibly wanted to ask, why was her sister mistreated? Irfinali don't want us to talk about this. That he sent his police force to drag a black woman through the mud because she refused to move, for them to break down her house and destroy her business. She has a store. They claim that they wanted to move these 20-something homes from black ancestral lands, because a road got past it. No road in past there, you know. No road in past there. They want the land for themselves. They will give it to their rich East Indian supporters. You know, they're like 5 or 6 big families that buying everything, including people who are convicted criminals in America. They like to say who's a criminal. Or
that Chevron has millions of dollars.
Who facilitated Irfinali. Again, I don't care. That's their individual lives. They can do what they want. What we want is accountability and justice. This is what this conversation is about tonight. Accountability and justice. And of course, CGID has a right to talk about this because CGID is in the forefront of the fight for justice for black people in Guyana and for all people, but particularly black people, because black people are the ones who run the threat of servitude again in Guyana from this PPP government. Nia Saban is in Geneva boasting and writing stuff to give it to Onish Waldron while he is at MCN refusing to play black people who the courts have ordered them to pay, including Enrico Wilford, journalist, and former CEO. They refuse to pay Enrico Wilford. Nia Saban. Black people in their right to the money according to the PPP. Look at how they're doing the roads. Look at who they're giving the contract. Since we start talking about it, they started giving some black people contracts. You know what those contracts are for? To clean the trenches. They give one black contractor a contract to build 2 schools. when they know that the contractors, based on what the regional chairman of the region, 10 is saying, didn't have the capacity, but their favorites, they support them politically. That's what the people in Linden are saying. I have no problems with Afro-Guyanese getting contracts from the government. Give it to your supporters, give it to neutral people, give it to opposition people. What I want to see is fairness. Is that racism? Ali? Irfan Ali? Calling out your government for only giving contracts to East Indians, 99% of government contracts. Is that racism? I know it is a demand for fairness. So if it's indeed one Guyana, I challenge Ali tonight. Issue a spreadsheet by ethnicity of the contracts your government give. And let the people judge. Let the elected officials in America judge. Let the people you met at the Hills judge. Let the people who were your escorts judge. Ali? Show me in Guyana where one East Indian woman was dragged through the mud and her business and homes destroyed and arrested by police because she refused to go, to leave her home for you all to break it up. Show me just one. How do you come from breaking into Oren Boston's home and shooting him in his bed, and the Guyana police force issuing a false statement saying that he died because he had a confrontation with the police, when in fact he was shot in his sleep? Show me one East Indian that has happened to. And the family had to fight for justice. The community had to riot for justice. Show me one East Indian where the police set up because he had a controversy over a girl, Crindle Bacchus, and was slaughtered by the police. And the police force issued 3 false statements trying to cover up his murder, and the people had to riot to get justice. Well, protests. What's that right? Protests. Show me one East Indian family that lost 2 sons, age 16, that were chopped to death by ACNU supporters, and the police covered it up and drove the parents to death through police terror. Show me one East Indian family, Irfan Ali. Show me where under the Granger administration, 90% of black people got all of the contracts. Show me. Would Ali, Irfan Ali, allow his mother to go through this?
That Chevron has millions of dollars. I want Banks DIH, I want Anson McCall to know that Chevron has millions of dollars in her property. And if her property has been break today, well, see me and understand with me that I'm not responsible.
Which Indian woman in Guyana goes through that? Which Indian woman in Guyana goes through that? The Guyana police force dare not. Dare not. Which Indian person under the Granger administration from Queens that spoke out against the Granger administration because of political bias, was detained at the airport by police on arrival. Which Indian? Which set of Indians in Guyana lands have been taken away? Ever. Ever. We're asking for accountability for those acts of racial discrimination. We live in a free country here. Of course, our friend Ali just sat and touted the values of democracy in America, where he said it's a free society and the people who facilitated him are free to do it. Yes, it is a free society, and we who spend our money are free to choose where to spend it. And I am not saying these people don't have a right to do what they did. That's their business. What we're saying is we want accountability. And when people like Bonita Montague goes to the meeting, or whatever you call it, walkabout, to ask for questions, ask questions, ask about justice for Shalon, ask about justice for the Henry boys, ask for justice for the 1,400 people, black young men that were murdered by the death squad. Why stop her? It's a free country. She has a right to ask her question. Why stop her? The political campaign has started. And just as viciously as the PPP comes after us, we would launch a serious campaign pointing out their racism. Pointing out their racism. Go and meet with the black people in Guyana, the African Guyanese that you're oppressing every day. Meet with them, sit at the table, ask them for their agenda for empowerment. Don't come to the diaspora and eat dal puri and roti and flip to roti for a picture up and talk about love. Is that love what they did to Shalon? Was it love when his government was tearing down the homes of black people at Mocha? Was it love when the Guyana police force was slaughtering Quindon Bacchus? Or in Boston, Kevin Andrews? Was it love when PPP supporters murdered and slaughtered and cut those Henry boys, chopped those Henry boys 47 times? Was that love? Was it love when the police covered up the murder? Don't preach us about love. That's hypocrisy. We want justice. We want equality. We want to make sure that Afro-Guyanese and Amerindians have equal benefit to the oil resources of the country, and that they get cash grants too, just like the people in the PPP who get cash grants. We know about it. Don't bring us this BS hypocrisy about love. Love? The PPP telling black people you want to see love? I have done nothing to the government other than speak out for justice. And they frame me, institute some charges in the magistrate court, and send some gunmen to my house, organizing for people to come to my house to threaten me. Which East Indian went through that? BS love you're talking about. Take your love and shove it up Freedom House. The same room where you sit and plot against black people, Irfan Ali. When you respect us, we'll respect you. When you respect our people, we'll respect you. respect is earned, love is shown. Love is not talk, love is shown. Like I said, we want equality. Equality means 50% East Indians get government contracts, 50% Black people get government contracts. It's called shared governance. We sharing the benefits of this government and we sharing governance. The board for NIS get 10 East Indians. We want to see 10 Black people on it who don't support you necessarily. Equality. Equity. We want to see Black people earning and having bank accounts and businesses and land equal to that of East Indians. Equity. We must have the same equity in the banking sector, equity in real estate. And we want equitable growth, where equally all of the people of the country are benefiting from the economic boom of the country and the oil and gas resources. We want equitable governance, where all of us play a part in the governance of our country at every level, national, local, regional. And all of us benefit from the government equity. Guyana has 83,000 square miles, most of which is forest and uninhabited. 18% is inhabited. And this PPP government decided to take away lands from Black people. 18% of the country is inhabited. And the PPP government taking away lands, breaking down the homes of the people of Mocha. It is a destruction of their fundamental right to live. That's what, and you come telling me, but you want to come in Brooklyn and say what? And people facilitate that without asking the pertinent questions about accountability and justice. That's what CJD wants to see. And that's what we are calling for. So as I close, I want to reiterate. The PPP and our finale don't always love when it comes to Black people. They're out to destroy the lives of Black people. They've taken away the funding from ABDA, took away the funding from IPADG, and then goes to the World Forum, the highest forum that is debating and discussion, and have a discussion on promoting the interests of Black people, ending discrimination against Black people. You put a racist and a fool, a house slave, defending discrimination against Black people? No wonder the United Nations called for legislation, laws to be put in place to end discrimination against Black people in Guyana. And trotting out your token few people in Brooklyn, and trotting out Onesh Waldron and Joe Hamilton Polari to say it and so can't convince Black people around the world. The evidence is now in the international community. We, as African Guyanese, or finally, since I have your attention, we want equality. We want equal rights and justice. We want equity. We want fair treatment. We want equitable governance. We want everybody to benefit from the largest of the country. Everybody to benefit from the resources of the country. And we want to benefit equally from the economic progress of the country. Don't talk, babble up, gibberish to us and talk about one Guyana. Act it. Act it. Act it. Call an international inquiry. Allow the UN to nominate the members of the Commission of Inquiry to investigate the slaughter of over 1,400 Black people, because it's going to haunt you all for the rest of your life. We're not going to stop until we get justice. Justice for the Henry boys. Justice for the victims of extrajudicial killings. Justice for Kevin Andrews. Justice for Orrin Boston. Justice for Quindon Bacchus. Don't come to Brooklyn and talk to us until you're talking about justice. Until you're talking about equality. Until you're talking about respect for the human dignity of Black people. Because until then, we'll continue to expose the racists in you, the apartheid government that you run, and your racial discrimination against people of African descent.